Welcome to FrankiVerse Fiction, where imagination meets frequency. This episode is part of the Straight from Death series, a collection of stories told from the perspective of the Reaper herself, channeled and written by Haleigh Overseth. Originally read live on TikTok, what you're about to hear is a deeply emotional exploration of humanity, transition, and remembrance through story. These characters aren't just fiction, they're frequencies. So take a breath, open your heart, and let the Reaper remind you how much you are loved. This is FrankiVerse Fiction, straight from death.
Okay, now I think we've got this. We're going to find out. Welcome to FrankiVerse Fiction, a TikTok live that will end up on the YouTubes and the audio podcast spaces. I'm Haleigh Overseth of Frankie's Podcast Network and FrankiVerse Media, creator of The Adventures of Abernathy Franklin. This here is how I imagine my pixie sort of devilish death Frankie self would appear in the multiverse. So, many blessings upon whosoever created this filter. I enjoy it. I'm excited to put it up on the YouTubes. I have ideas of putting this out as a book on Amazon very shortly and then using this as an audiobook on Amazon as well. Because why not? But it's a lot to figure that out, and I mostly know how to do the YouTube podcast sort of things easily, and my neurospicy brain is a bit overwhelmed at having to reteach myself how to do like Amazon KDP so that I can sell some books, and figuring out the audiobook Audible thing. Oh, this human existence and figuring out the whole money aspect of it is really very tiresome, isn't it? I just want to write stories, you guys. That's the honest truth. I'm a writer at heart, at incarnation, at energy signature. Anyway, so today I'm going to be doing my best. We'll see if I can get through the entirety of, it's only 21 pages on a Google Doc. It's not going to be a very long ebook, y'all, and probably a pretty short audiobook. But it'll make for, I don't know, I suppose at least a podcast episode. We'll find out. We'll see if I can get through all of these. And thank you for joining. If you're here live, if you're here unalive, undead, vampires, zombies, ghouls, ghosts, anyone and everyone who is pretending they enjoy adulting, thank you so much for being here for FrankiVerse Fiction. Without further ado, I will start to read Straight from Death, Existence as Told by the Reaper herself. It may come as a shock to the greater portion of my audience, but contrary to common conception, I am endlessly fascinated by humanity. I would go so far as to say that I adore you. Why else would I guide each and every one of you through your transition out of physical incarnation? And while I'm dispelling misconceptions, I, Death, am actually female. Not in the gendered sense you humans imagine. I have no physical form and thus no anatomy to speak of. In the vibrational energy way, I am feminine. The entire universe is female, really. Life can only be created from the void. The cosmic womb, if you will. Don't get discouraged, men. You contain feminine energy too, as much as it may pain many of you to admit it. I also take no issue with being associated with darkness. Light can only be born from the dark. The stars shine brightest against the night sky. And you do all shine so very brightly in the end. Which again, isn't an end, but a transition. In the ultimate act of letting go, what you consider to be your death, you each finally allow yourselves to be the light you truly have always been. If I do find fault with humanity, and even fault is too strong a word, It is in that one instance. The vast majority of you have to reach the end before you permit yourselves to see the brilliance of who you are. If I could ever wish anything for any of you, it would be that you would choose to die before your death, to live in the light that is you without the need of my darkness to see it. Don't beat yourselves up over it, though. This Earth school you chose is the highest order of masterclass, and learning to navigate it is undoubtedly a son of a bitch. Or daughter, as the case may be. Don't worry. Knowing the universe like I do, she doesn't mind at all being called a bitch. She, like me, is unconditional love. Love has no need to mind much of anything at all. The only reason you humans mind much of anything is because it is a function of this school that you've chosen. To be human is to forget. It may seem a cruel caveat to this earth life from the common human perspective. The idea that you come into this world knowing that you are unconditional love, that you are all that is, only to have that knowledge wiped from your human mind. But you see, part of what you've forgotten is that you volunteered to erase your own memory. There was no better way to expand your existence than to experience yourself from a place of not knowing the power that you are. And the broader part of you so deeply desired to expand and grow. And so here you have incarnated, purposefully, joyfully, born screaming into this place that so many of you curse and damn. We, myself, the universe, all of knowing existence, we feel so much joy even in that strange habit humanity has. A habit of seeing your collective world as broken, in need of adjustment and correction. That is a part of this school as well. Your ascended masters, Buddhas and gurus, they aren't more spiritual or better connected than any of the rest of you. They've simply remembered the perfection of all that is and have chosen to allow it. All of life, your own included, is entirely perfect. The filters of your perception of reality are what disallow your own joyous journey. But again, don't beat yourselves up over it. Even if it requires your own death, your transition, you do all see the joy and perfection of this earth journey once I come to collect you from it. If you will allow me now, I'd like to make my case with a few examples. Boy and girl, a love story. We'll start with the story of a boy. While I understand that you humans are highly attached to labels and names, we in non-physical existence have no need of such things. Even I don't actually refer to myself as death, but for your ease of comprehension, I take on this moniker. In order that we may avoid wild speculation as to which boy this story refers to, we'll simply call him Boy. Boy chose to be born the youngest child of 6. And to answer the immediate question, yes, you do all absolutely choose the family you are born to, among other facets of your human incarnation. But let's not become too entangled in that just now. Boy's family was not wealthy by human standards, but they didn't go without, as humans like to say. His father was a ranch hand to a family that could be called old money. His mother worked for the same family as a cook in their kitchen. Boy grew up watching his siblings take up work for the same prosperous equine magnates that employed his parents, and also watching how very different the lives of his horse and land-owning counterparts were to his own. Having no one else to look after Boy, his mother brought him along to the grand estate when she went to work in the kitchen. While he wasn't yet able to work as his elder siblings did, Boy would sneak away from the kitchen and play outside with the youngest daughter of the wealthy family. We'll call her Girl. Girl was also the youngest of 6 children, daughters all. Of her sisters, Girl was widely considered to be the least blessed in the way of good looks. Their mother being something of a local beauty, it was often bemoaned in not so quieted tones that this lone female offspring of all the others did not seem to inherit her mother's fair features. Boy didn't mind. He thought Girl was beautiful as she was. From the very start of their friendship, he loved her soul far too much to ever consider her lesser than her sisters in any degree, whatever others might say. As they reached their later teenage years, Boy and Girl, of course, grew fond of one another in the ways that humans often do. Boy, by this time, had taken up post as ranch hand like his father and siblings before him. This, naturally, meant that he was not of sufficient stock to be allowed to wed Girl if her father had anything to say about it. We'll skip over the more mundane details here. But after the inevitable explosive argument that ensued when Boy was caught with Girl in a compromising position in one of the stables, Boy left the ranch to make something of himself. What he made was a considerable group of followers in what I do believe you humans like to refer to as a cult. Boy may not have been traditionally educated, but his righteous anger at the hierarchy of society, he found an impressively persuasive voice. Not that his followers needed much persuading. They too had been victim to the stations they were born to. Boy's message was a breath of fresh air to his rallied troops, many of whom left their own lowly stations to join the community he was building. Though forbidden to see him, Girl watched Boy amass his church from afar, keeping up with the local gossip about him from family and friends. Whatever Girl may have apparently lacked in looks, she more than made up for in intelligence. She knew that whatever anyone in their upper-class circles might say, her father's money was the only reason anyone deemed him respectable and paid him attention. Boy held the respect of his followers with nothing more than his convictions, and in Girl's eyes, that only made him all the more enchanting. Again, skipping over the unnecessary details, Girl made a number of attempts over the years to join Boy in his secular community, each time thwarted and stolen back home by her father. Lesser a beauty than her sisters she may be, but no child of his would make a fool of him by taking up with fodder such as Boy. And so the righteous wrath of Boy grew. Somewhere in his human early 30s, Boy had fully become the rage of his foiled love story. If he could not live in the joy of Girl, then he would find a way to be remembered forever by her wretched, pompous father and all of his offensively affluent kin. Let them all see the madness they had driven him to, the devastation their rejection had wrought. Boy called his entire flock to their gathering hall and summoned the last and most powerful of his orating skills. Enraptured as they were with Boy, only a handful of his community protested the plan Boy laid out. Those handful were the first to go. Their bodies were dragged to the end of the road outside the community's humble hall. Upon the chest of one of the dissenters was left a short manifesto of sorts, laying the blame for their carnage at the feet of the moneyed gentry in no uncertain terms. Then for the ugly final justice. Boy and his parishioners returned to the gathering hall, proceeded to board it shut from the inside, and set the hall and themselves ablaze. The screams of those inside were lost to the nearby townsfolk, all having perished before the smoke finally drew enough attention to bring onlookers. Girl was not permitted to read the manifesto, but she didn't need to. She well knew what unkindness had driven Boy and his flock to their infernal end. In her own final act of rebellion, Girl locked herself in her room at the family ranch, laid in her lonely bed, and set herself alight to join Boy. Before you shed tears of despair, know that every one of these poor souls was collected from their bodily vessels well before they could truly experience the horror of their chosen fate. That is the way with all of my collections. Only those who have requested to lag behind for the full physical flesh experience of torment are left to do so. I met boy and girl together in their transitions, for there is no time, and to guide them simultaneously away from their human theater was their wish. Upon their shift to non-physical with me, they were able to review the way their drama had played out together. They watched many of the infinite possibilities and timelines their story could have followed, but there was no lament that they did not experience these potentialities. Again, in the non-physical, when you remember that you are unconditional love, you really don't need to mind anything much. Boy and girl saw the value in their story as it was, saw the generations that shifted cultural paradigms because they heard the tale of boy and girl, and they were happy that they had chosen to live the story as they did. Once their review was complete, they agreed that playing the game was far too much fun to stop there. Boy and girl decided upon another soul contract to incarnate as humans and play the game again to see if they could find their way to one another once more. And they delighted in the idea of forgetting, for they knew their remembrance of each other would be magical in their next life. Before we move to our next human tale, I would like to make note that boy and girl were not the only willing participants in their love story. Girl's father, the ill-fated parishioners, and indeed all involved, agreed to play their respective roles. The universe makes no mistakes, and there are no unwitting players in the game of physical existence. The trick is to remember that bit while you're still acting in your chosen role. The Clockmaker's Son. Earth quantum physics has an established phenomenon referred to as time dilation. Essentially, an object in motion experiences slower passage of time. Don't ask for the details. I'm no human physicist. And anyway, non-physical entities have no experience of time. We do, however, find immense amusement at humanity's highly determined fixation upon the passage of time. It moves too slowly when you're not enjoying your now. It moves too quickly when you have bills to pay and deadlines to meet. Time is your greatest enemy, as well as your most precious, coveted asset. And yet, in truth, time does not exist. For the souls in our next journey, time was indeed of the essence, as you humans say. This, one of my favorite collections, is the story of a clockmaker. Names and labels not being of import, we'll just stick to Clockmaker. Clockmaker lived in a modest apartment above his shop with his wife and son. Never mind where or when, somewhere on Earth, and sometime after the advent of your timepiece technologies advancing to gears and second hands. You humans are ever so precise in your measurement of time in all of its non-existent glory and torment. Truth be told, Clockmaker never took great pleasure in his field of work. He had been born to a poor farmer who died when he was young, and a local businessman took him in as an apprentice. Clockmaker did progress in his skills sufficiently enough to open his own shop, and certainly made a better living than his father before him ever had. He supposed he ought to be thankful for that, or so he had become accustomed to telling himself. Clockmaker's son, Clockmaker Jr., was a rambunctious lad, often playing with the tools and parts in Clockmaker's shop. most often breaking things that Clockmaker had in partial completion, or creating odd compilations that Junior and his mother considered works of art. Clockmaker, busy as he was with custom tasks and consistently behind in his own deadlines, did not share his wife or Junior's joyfulness at this sort of frivolity. Throughout the upbringing of Junior, Clockmaker found himself in great frustration with the boy's abundant playfulness and chaotic tinkering. Clockmaker often thought Junior and his wife were intentionally mounting a united front against him, as if they were both doggedly resolved to be happily impertinent, while Clockmaker toiled lamentably and continuously to keep food on the table and clothing on their backs. As years went by and his dissatisfaction with work and home life deepened, Clockmaker took to the bottle, and heavily so. Gradually, he began to lose business and his drunken incapacity to complete projects. Junior did his best to take up the slack and keep the family above water, so to say. Still, Junior himself had an unquenchable desire to make play out of clockwork, and his own creative projects had a habit of keeping his attention, much to the detriment of paid work. Slow declines, in human terms, can be painfully wearing. Clockmaker's reliance on drink, as it is wont to do, gave itself to anger, which naturally turned to violence. Clockmaker's wife tolerated the intolerable as best she could, always hoping her son's beautiful mind would win out in its creativity. Still, the prospect of watching Junior slowly decay in this lowly shop as her husband had, was more than she could bear. Shortly before the shop went under, from lack of business, Clockmaker's wife chose to make an early exit and hung herself from the dusty rafters in the attic. Junior, devastated by his mother's departure, took up what tools and parts he could carry and left home. Clockmaker knew not where. Living out the days left to him as a beggar and sometimes thief, Clockmaker slowly drank himself into oblivion, upon which I came to collect him. At the initial outset of our encounter, Clockmaker made quite a spectacle of himself in my direction, belligerently damning me and whatever god may exist for the life thrust upon him, the years of disappointment, and his dismal manner of ending. Never one to be punitive, for unconditional love never is, I opted to silently allow his derogatory rant to continue, until Clockmaker had exhausted himself in justifying his hate for the life he had led. This sort of display never does last long once you return to the non-physical and begin your life review. We began the review of Clockmaker's incarnation with his own happy childhood. Monetarily poor though it may have been, and forget though he most certainly did, before he became Clockmaker, he had been a decidedly happy child. Most of his time was spent outside playing on the farm, building forts from logs and sticks, and sometimes even creating his own toys and games. His mother had died in childbirth, but his father was loving enough for two parents while he slaved away to eke out a living for himself and his lone son. From the perspective of non-physical, you can often see what's coming, you might say. And Clockmaker had to ask for a pause of his review when it came to the sudden heart attack that took his father. While emotions like disappointment and self-loathing are not felt in the uncomfortable way that they are in physicality, non-physical Clockmaker understood well that had it not been for his own son, non-physical Clockmaker understood well that he had not been for his own son the father that he himself experienced. Were he still in the physical, Clockmaker might have felt shame for the man that he became. From where he sat with me, however, he had enough love to forgive himself. From here, he was able to see clearly that the loss of his kind father wounded his human heart more than his physical self ever allowed him to process. It was this buried grief that pained his life unto his death, more than any occupational or family frustration. Non-physical does not cry, but Clockmaker was positively overwhelmed by the love he felt for the father he had lost. After completing the remainder of his own life review, as many of you do, Clockmaker asked to see what was becoming of Junior. Junior used the mechanical knowledge he gained in his father's shop and the creativity encouraged by his mother to create the most splendid clockwork machines. Some of them taking on humanoid shape, Junior's clockwork men could perform simple but beautiful tasks, like mimicking writing or playing a piano. Because the universe is limitless and non-physical can accomplish anything, Clockmaker chose to be something of a spirit guide for Junior, taking the opportunity to be the loving father he once had, but had never been to Junior in his physicality. Clockmaker nudged the right humans and pulled the right strings, and as a result, Junior's accomplishments were mightily rewarded, both in wealth and recognition. Junior lived a long life of joy, love, and ease. At his own time of collection, Junior reunited with Clockmaker, and they rejoiced in their love of the game they had played out together. As is permitted if a soul requests, Junior invited Clockmaker to review his life with him. And Clockmaker was once again overwhelmed by love when seeing how Junior had adored his father, even in his darkest moments in physical life. Junior's passion to create had provided him the strength to forgive anything. Even before his return to non-physical. Never did the son of Clockmaker blame his father for his ire, or his mother for her choice to leave him. And this, my beloved humans, is what makes this tale one of my very favorites. Human devotion to putting forth your highest joy, regardless of external circumstances, is rather one of the most magical capacities you darling physical beings have. Truly, following your dreams in physical life is among the most powerful forms of love. We in the non-physical rejoice in that love to a degree that cannot be expressed in any human language. Surfing without a license. Conventional wisdom is a unique false concept that humans have. It is one of the many techniques that humans have created in order to experience limitation. And humans do hold steady to such a vast array of limiting beliefs. All things are possible in existence. There is nothing out of bounds. But in this game of expansion that you have chosen to play, it is necessary to believe in limitation in order that you might expand beyond it. In your earthly measure of years, conventional wisdom of the early 1900s was that it was physically impossible for a human to run a mile race in under 4 minutes. Then, somewhere about 1954, a man named Roger Bannister defied this collective agreement and did, in fact, complete a mile dash in under 4 minutes. Your most dedicated international runners now accomplish this feat regularly. But this tale is not about a runner. My next collection is indeed that of an athlete. In keeping with our lack of need for names, we shall refer to this collected entity as Surfer. Surfer was born in a city along an ocean coast. From early childhood, Surfer had an insatiable love for ocean waves. The feel of the water rushing past their limbs, the smell of the salt air, the sound of the water crashing against itself on the shore. Nearly any waking moment that the surfer was not occupied with schooling, eating, or other human obligations, they were dashing off from their home on the beach to meet the waves and commune with the sea. Surfer was born male by human physical definitions, and they did spend their first 26 years of life existing as male. Surfer learned to ride ocean waves on a board as a male, was taught to do so by a male, was a member of an all-male swimming team, coached by males. They even won several male surfing competitions. As at home as Surfer always felt in the warmth of the salt waves, they never felt at home in the body deemed male. And so, by the age of 29, Surfer had fully transitioned into a more comfortable female body. Ever enamored of the sea, and eager to continue competing at the sport that was their highest joy, Surfer began entering competitions with other athletes of the feminine gender, thrilled with the idea of finally being able to exist as what they felt to be their most authentic self. Of course, as is conventional to humans, this new gender-blended sporting was met with massive resistance and wide controversy. Surfer was demonized by fellow athletes, both male and female. Media commenters, both male and female, argued endlessly over whether it was fair to the other females to have to compete with a formerly male contender. After all, human conventional wisdom did state that women were physically incapable of meeting men on the playing fields with equal ability. What human-born a woman could ever win against a former man? Despite loving support from family and friends, Surfer could not help but feel the strain of ever-increasing exclusion. New rules were instituted to prevent Surfer from engaging in events meant for those contestants who had been properly born as women. Some of the male organizations under which Surfer previously participated offered to allow them to come back to challenge the males once more. But even the male athletes rebuked Surfer for daring to be their most satisfying self if it meant causing the broader public such discomfort. Protesters of Surfer began to espouse that their awards won while in a female body had been ill-gotten and demanded correction of this injustice. Buckling to the pressure of the enraged masses, the powers that be in Surfer's competing world revoked their female event awards. Of all the slings and arrows hurled at Surfer for being invalid to the mainstream, this was the last Surfer could withstand. Shortly before their 33rd birthday, Surfer ambled hopelessly down the beach that began their earthly existence, walked into the waters, and let the waves carry them out to sea. My collections of the desperately forlorn often begin the same, with pained insistence that life ought not to have been such a heavy burden. Surfer was no different. They first begged for and then demanded an explanation of why a creator would force them into a body that felt wrong. However, as I have said before, this display of residual human agonized emotion never lasts long once you return to the non-physical and remember who you are. Drained of the last drops of human misunderstanding, Surfer began to recall the mission their soul elected to take on. You see, my beloved humans, many of you do indeed very specifically choose a life of adversity. Not only for your own individual soul expansion and growth, but for the benefit of the collective consciousness into which you incarnate. In the arms of death, my adoring embrace, Surfer could now recall the choice they had made to begin on Earth as a body not aligned to who they truly felt they were. Once you become human and forget, not all souls are able to cast off the expectations of others in favor of living their truth. This was not Surfer's first human ride in a body that felt foreign. Indeed, Surfer had incarnated many times as a human born the opposite gender to that which would make them feel the most fulfilled. Sometimes a male that felt female, sometimes a female that felt more masculine. This incarnation was the first in which Surfer had been able to choose to embody what felt right, regardless of what the broader species thought to be natural or correct. Now, returned to non-physical, all-knowing existence, Surfer could see how this particular life benefited not only their individual expansion, but that of the human collective. It is a powerful act of love to choose to express as your authentic self, even in the face of opposition. When other humans watch and experience one who chooses this self-love over the opinions of others, it does often make them uncomfortable. It is a mirror of sorts, reflecting to the seemingly disgusted what is truly a distaste for their own fear of authenticity. Many of you beautiful humans allow the fear of rejection and derision to prevent you from being your highest self while in physicality. It's not your fault. It's part of your learning. Whether it is to choose a body most suited to who you are, or whether it is a career path, a lover, a lifestyle, conventional human wisdom often stymies what you believe is possible for you to experience. Surfer could have chosen many other methods in which to shake up traditional paradigms of human thought. The subject of misaligned gender was simply a favorite of their soul to play with. Surfer delighted in planting this new seed in the consciousness of human athletic competition, that perhaps formerly male competitors would become a challenge for the females of the species to rise up. Perhaps the unthinkable intergender sports participation could be the new sub-4-mile run. The believed impossibility of women having the capacity to be on even playing fields in physical games with men could become the next normal occurrence, shifting the paradigm from one that once could not be to one that quite easily is. And Surfer was thrilled to select a new incarnation and hoped that in this new lifetime, they would see the genders happily playing together, which truly, my cherished humans, is the way you were meant to play. The Eternal Comedian. Sidebar to the audience. This one is one of my favorites. They're all my favorites, as the writer and as Death and as the Frankie version I am, but this one's a, yes, extra favorite. Human laughter is a beautiful and powerful expression of joyous love. When you humans find yourselves in fits of laughter, the kind that brings tears to your eyes and makes you catch your breath, those moments are when you are closest in feeling to your core natural being. Non-physical does not laugh in the human sense. Laughter implies surprise. All-knowing existence is never surprised. But that blissful, light sensation, that pure enjoyment of the present moment that you feel when you laugh, that is the truth of who you really are. That is how non-physical feels in every moment. Death loves all of creation equally. Why wouldn't I? Still, the tale of this particular collection is another of my favorites. I will share with you now the tale of a human we shall call Comedian. Comedian was an entertainer from early childhood. Whether the audience consisted only of his parents, of larger family gatherings, of kids on the playground, or even a girl that he wished to impress, Comedian was never not performing. Certainly, there were those humans who would become frustrated with Comedian and ask him to switch it off. But Comedian's switch was permanently stuck in the on position. One human who appreciated Comedian's perpetual on status was a boy in his neighborhood that we shall call Best Friend. Comedian and Best Friend were inseparable from the age of 7. Always heard laughing raucously whenever they were playing, and never once in any sort of trouble individually. Comedian and Best Friend became quite the impressive duo to friends and strangers alike. Life was a show in their eyes, and even when no other humans were in sight or earshot, Comedian and Best Friend played audience for one another. Joined at the hip as they were, if I may borrow the human expression, Comedian and Best Friend chose to attend the same college together. They even managed to convince their respective roommates to shuffle room assignments so that Comedian and Best Friend could inhabit the same dorm room. They were the life and soul of every party they found, and the hilarious bane of their philosophy professor's existence. Both much to the enjoyment of their peers. They had no direction, no sense of a plan for the future, and not a single care in the wide world. After their first freshman semester, they went home for holiday break. Best Friend was gifted a motorcycle by his wealthy uncle and was so excited to ride to Comedian's house to show it off. He didn't catch so much as a glance of the delivery truck that blew through a stop sign to his right. Comedian spent New Year's Day that holiday break, trying his best to crack jokes at Best Friend's funeral. After all, Best Friend had always been the only human that had never wanted Comedian to switch it off. Comedian failed his second semester at college, having spent most of his time drinking heavily while attempting to remain the life of the party. He missed his friend, but the show must go on. Despite his parents' lack of support for the idea, Comedian left school and decided to pursue acting and stand-up comedy. Sure, he worked odd jobs here and there to pay rent while being rejected for this or that audition or being booed off stage at comedy clubs. And on any of the nights he would fall asleep thinking he ought to just give up, he would dream about having a great time with Best Friend. And he would remember that Best Friend never wanted him to switch off. Comedian gradually built a following of fans and was able to stop working odd jobs. In what seemed like a stroke of impossible luck, Comedian found himself partying after a show with a film producer who wanted him for a role. After his big break, as they say, luck and fame only skyrocketed for the eternal entertainer. Sold out arenas, massive blockbuster films. Comedian couldn't walk down the street in most major cities around the world without being recognized. Switch ever in the on position, Comedian quickly became an avatar of himself. As with so many who seek to transform pain through their art form, Comedian found that recognition, audience laughter, and liquor weren't enough to quite fill the void. So the party had to get harder to keep the life going. 22 years to the day of losing best friend, comedian was found in his hotel room by a housekeeper, half dead of an overdose. He woke up in the hospital, surrounded by family and his manager, who informed him that he would be discharged from the hospital only to enter rehab. For the first time in his life, comedian felt wholly and entirely switched off. Energy resets from rock bottom are uniquely amazing in you humans. Through the lens of sobriety, and aided by therapy and a spiritual awakening, comedian could view his own on-off switch from new perspectives. He understood that always being on in early life was the innocent enjoyment of being alive. And that after losing best friend, grief mutated that on quality into a way to run from death. Comedian put his fresh insights into a series of humorous and very deeply useful books. His former audience loved him all the more for helping them to cope with their own grief through his story. He even found new followers of the spiritual variety who had been looking for something more hopeful and joyous to fill their own void. Comedian managed what few humans generally do. He died before his death. He learned to appreciate his darkness and shine his light so that others might see the possibility that they could too. The on-off switch is a choice, sure, but so is how you choose to approach and experience being in either position. Perhaps not at a ripe old age, but certainly at a reasonable one, I came to collect comedian. In his transition, he asked to see best friend again, but he didn't have to. Best friend had been waiting with me all along. Best friend emerged from the ether to tell comedian how proud he was of all he had done and how many lives he had touched. Comedian said that it would have been easier if best friend had stuck around to do it with him. Why did he have to leave so early? Best friend was happy to help comedian remember. I left at exactly the time we agreed I would before we came in, he told comedian. And you used that grief magnificently. Of course, comedian and best friend knew their story didn't have to play out the way that it did. Though, if it hadn't, comedian may not have been able to teach more of humanity to process their grief and look for joy. In the evolution of human collective consciousness, this expansion was the natural next step. Comedian had agreed to play his part, and indeed had done it magnificently. Comedian and best friend decided they would incarnate as humans again, and this time, they would play out their fun together. It is important to note, dear humans, that this is a choice you can always make. If you awake to the natural state of joyful being that you truly are, while still in physical form, you can choose to have, be, or do anything you desire. And you do not need to find rock bottom to do it. That is the next step in human consciousness evolution. Many of you are here now because you wanted to play out this step. So remember to laugh. Feeling good is the core of who you are. Oh, isn't this perfect? It's time for a left turn. Thanks everybody who's been hanging out. We are coming up to the last, let's see if I can fix this. There we are. We're coming up to the last of the Straight from Death stories, or at least this current iteration of it. So thanks everyone who's been hanging out here. I really do appreciate it. Excited to go put this on the YouTubes and the audio spaces. Gonna need to have just a little bit of coffee and just a little bit of Coca-Cola here, folks, because again, we're about to take a bit of a left turn from where the vibes have been. Thank you again for joining me. It's fun to reread my stories that I have channel written and experienced from the cosmos, and even myself be overwhelmed with emotion at how much I resonate and connect. Indeed, all of these incarnation stories. Hi again, this is author Haleigh Overseth. I do see these all as being various incarnations that parallel lives, past lives, call it what you will, that I have experienced or transmute the energy of through these stories. You can think I'm crazy if you want, because it's your life and your experience, and who's to say that I'm not crazy in your experience? Anyway. The night the villains surrendered. Hey, metaphysically emo friends and fam, it's Frankie here. Abernathy Frankie Franklin, that is, the chillest and most well-cosmically traveled of the current known Abernathy Franklins. Frankie with an I, as in I am the Imaginatrix face of Frankie's podcast network and visionary essence extrapolator for FrankiVerse Media. When your energetic image needs a rebrand, I'm the baddie boss lady, creationator, mistress of mischief you call upon. Don't worry, you can get all my adventures and those of my infinite selves elsewhere in the Amazonverse. Yeah, that's right, the Bezos machine. That's where our esteemed author channel, Miss Overseth, has more universal consciousness edutainment in the fractionally fiction but extra-dimensionally accurate flavor for your human brain sauce consumption. No need to adjust your frequency language dials. You read and or heard that correctly, friends and neighbors. Strap in and get used to it. Death gave Frankie the keys and we're shifting the vibe. Hard left turns are a specialty of mine. Remind me to tell you about my Neptunian NASCAR medals one day. For the present foreseeable now, though, friends and friend-adjacent energies, entities, and beings of all shapes and sizes, Frankie Babe is here in place of Death to steer this moderately morose pirate ship to its next evolution of iterations. My driving style is a bit more 0 point and less dense than the vibrasound maths in word form you have been digesting up to now. I hope you won't mind, friends. Death certainly doesn't. I really rather think the old gal is happy for the rebrand reprieve. And why shouldn't she be? Being the energy of transformation when change is the only constant in the whole of existence? Well, it's a thankless gig, and even the Reaper could use a rest once in a while. Our first soul collection was a love story. If we were bookending this miniature compendium nice and neat the way we humans like, we would complete this paranormal briefing of soul collection tales with another love story. Something from Atlantis, maybe. Remind me to tell you about Antu and Enahir another time. Indeed, good folks, even our own author channel, Miss Overseth, H-Bomb, Haleigh Babe, H-Spec cheer captain of the Pixie Brigade, she herself was of the initial impression that a cosmic tragedy turned hopeful love story would be the last shared little snippet from Miss Reaper's spookified Lady Death. This go-round in the upward spiral that is inevitable, friends and neighbors, we'll just have to see where we end up. Frankie has the keys now, remember? So we're going to venture into a strange multiverse yarn spin of a different twist. Take a mind dive with me into the night when all the villains in the known awareness of human shared consciousness chose to surrender. That's right, white flag, hands in the air, gave it up as a bad job, surrendered of their own will and soul energy signature volition. All the big bad guys of human imagination creation put down the knives and guns and chucked it in, as it were. Well then, where to begin this darkest of all dark nights of souls? Probably with a Guffrey special. One of my favorite snacks in all of creation, the Guffrey special. I once wolfed down 16 Jupiter-sized plates of Guffrey specials at an interdimensional barbecue festival somewhere Earth Astro north of Alpha Draco 9 in the Boo Yitney Nebula. Consummate snacker though I am, I actually did that one on a bet. No idea it was going to get me the Draco 9 equivalent of a gold medal in competitive eating. But eons of time-space pie slices later, I'm in the top 15% of Galactic Federation competitive eaters. And I don't even go looking for events. Ooh, hold on. TikTok thinks I need to make sure that I'm still a real human, even though I have this lovely filter on. Thank you for your patience, y'all. Appreciate you. Back from the little TikTok intermission and into the story. And I don't even go looking for events. They all find me. A bit how trouble finds heroes, really. The scene we set here is one of heroes and villains. Think Batman and the Joker, but from the realm of reality we can access with an ayahuasca trip or some high-quality mescaline. Franny Lynn is the Abernathy Franklin who would be the one to give you details on the dosages that would get you to these heroes and villains. More on Franny Lynn in another compendium, though. For my part as death correspondent storyteller, I will give the details from my own recollection of visiting this particular night, in the holographic fourth density flesh. I'm an expert quantum multidimensional traveler, I believe I did mention. See, my baby sister in the human incarnation spaces has her own infinite selves in the multiverse, as we all do. One of these infinite incarnations is a clown from the DMT realm who goes by the name of Guffrey. Guffrey caught me off guard on a balcony in southern Italy one night. No Franny Lynn assistance needed on this occasion, just some good deep breaths. Not meditating. Nah, that's not how I roll in my Zen cosmic appreciation times. I was breathing deep the warm, creamy vapors of a toasted marshmallow latte. Late night go-go juice for some rebrand writing I was working up for my friend Marky Utah. He's got a most excellent Bavarian ski chalet he rents out in Eden. Eden, Utah, that is, not Garden of. Although Adam and Eve did spend a nice stay there as a honeymoon trip after renewing their vows. I was about to channel Bernie, the writer version of Abernathy Franklin, when the sweet steam rising from my mug turned to putrid DMT stench in my sinuses. A swirl of rainbow rave light sparkles hog-tied my third eye like a psychedelic Calamity Jane rodeo circus was about to begin. It was Guffrey. Telepathic communication and dream-walking experience scriptification about to commence, dear audience. Hang on tight to that emergency ripcord. You may feel a need to bail if you're among the faint of heart or easily offended olfactory senses. Baby sister DMT clown Guffrey. Bro, dude, sis and cosmic traveler sauce, get over here. You gotta see this. Frankie Italian style PR boss. Guffrey, sis, babe, brosif of the seven sisters. I want to see absolutely everything you have to show me in the alter state of my human ego mind world. But dude, do you have to pop in here with that DMT nastiness? I feel like I just got hit with a rotten egg hex right between the eyes from inside my brain. BSC Guffrey. You can ignore the smell of whatever your dog rolled in at the park like you're nose blinder than a dead bat. But I pop in here with my perfume and you complain about it? Shut your computer and drink your coffee and watch this. You're gonna love it. It's rad. PRB Frankie. Lucy rolled in what at the park? Damn it. Yeah, okay. Can I give her a bath while I mind theater bioportal to watch this? I'll forget until we go to bed otherwise. BSC Guffrey. Yeah, whatever. Bubble pup, bath it up. I will make sure Lou Babe is fine while I zip you out of your body for a bit. PRB Frankie. Thank you, Guffrey. Do appreciate your attention to my human avatar responsibility sauce while we explore this. What do you want me to look at? I scooped up my beloved Corgi Terrier mix, Lucy, who it turned out did in fact roll in I have no clue what nonsense. Not that I could smell it over the DMT in my nostrils, even if I wasn't the generally scent-impaired human that I am. But I could now see a streak of dirty grossness, cleverly concealed in the black Holstein-like spots of Lucy's otherwise white fur that covered most of her four-legged frame. Well played, Lou Babe. Touche. Get that gross smell roll on. While my physical human vessel went through the motions of dog bathery, Guffrey began to play a holographic film in my mind's eye. If you could imagine, Willy Wonka's terror tunnel was actually an apple seed planted in a graveyard. The diverse fruits that wicked purple tree would bear about sums up the cast of characters dancing across the brain big screen. Then I let my consciousness drop to my heart center with this misanthropic motley crew scene portal, and blip, there I was. Much like human sleeping dream experience, physical bilocation into the DMT realm can give you energetic impressions of your location, even if your physical vessel can't actually see them. That is to say, while I was inside some wide open space with brick walls, 3-story high ceilings, and a fair share of busted out windows, I was also aware of the structure from the outside, as if I had seen the aerial film shot of it before arriving into the scene. PRB Frankie. Very Cabinet of Dr. Caligari tilted architecture vibes. Okay, I dig it. Standard 90s kid movie expectations set up for grunge criminal hideout props. Check. Well-placed table full of what must be DMT versions of firearms? Ha, they look like bubble guns to me. I picked up one of the strange weapons and aimed it at some gothic chandeliers hanging from the ceiling some long distance overhead. The lights of the chandeliers were floating orbs full of purple and green flames. Spooky beautiful. BSC Guffrey. Wouldn't recommend that if I were you. PRB Frankie. Does it fire indestructible bullets that will mess up this physical vessel I materialized if they ricochet off the rafters? I always do love that sound in movies when bullets bounce off metal. Ooh, and it makes the sparks. BSC Guffrey. You're such a human. It is a bubble gun, but the bubbles fire nightmare plasma that will turn the lights into whatever worst mutant thing pops into your mind first. PRB Frankie. Ghostbusters rooftop. Gotcha. Choose the form of your destructor, Dr. Venkman. I do love a good Cthulhu rising out of the sea. Could be wild groovy to see one pop out of a chandelier. Guffrey rolled her eyes loudly, took the bubble gun from me, and replaced it with the pretty standard human salami sub sandwich with my favorite fixins from the Earth realms. BSC Guffrey. Snack distract yourself with this. The show's gonna start soon, bro. Oh, look at that. I've done this thing again. PRB Frankie. Don't mind if I do. Ooh, I love that spicy mustard stuff with salami. Also, love these coffin-shaped wooden crates bursting with packages of rainbow-powdered substances like illicit pirate booty. Who's that not Jack Nicholson brosif over there? Is that what human consciousness Joker looks like through DMT goggles? And that guy there has to be like Lex Luthor from Superman, right? Wow, damn, there's gotta be like 40 or 50 of these heist-a-thon characters in here. How about that chick? Love that disco ball Catwoman getup she's sporting. No, friends and neighbors. Mouthfuls of sandwich do not stop me talking. Out loud or telepathically. Be upset if you must. I told you this wasn't going to be for the faint of heart. Or those with ASMR sensitivities. BSC Guffrey. Why do you need human comic book lore points of reference? You get the idea, bro. These are all the bad guys. Arch nemesis types, foes and villains, the robbers of banks, thieves of cars, the racketeers and money launderers. The Italian mafia had babies with all the guys who stabbed Caesar, and they were raised by the savage warriors who sacked Troy, and they all grew up to create the underground Illuminati organization that took over society through shadow governments. The infinite doers of pillage and plunder for the sake of sadism, chaos, greed, and infamous evil glory. Yeah, whatever. So most of them are dressed up like circus clowns doing a drag show curated by Tim Burton. It's on brand in my reality. Go with it. And oh my God, yes, that not Jack Nicholson dude is what humanity Joker sauce looks like in DMT land. Just eat your sandwich. PRB Frankie. Hey, no arguments from me. I take a backwater gospel Undertaker animation immersive experience. I'm with you, Guffrey, my dude, sis. Why do they all look like they just watched old Yeller die on the anniversary of their parents being murdered? Sad times depressed baddies aren't exactly the norm in human villain narratives. More maniacal mischief dementia. What's the angle? Let it be known, friends and neighbors. Chill vibin', smooth cosmic riding Frankie Babe is no stranger to the human emotional abyss. I've taken my fair share of nosedives into the depression nightmare spiral. Believe me or don't, folks. You don't find your way to Zen as an incarnated human without a pitfall into Super Mario Brothers underworld here and there. At least not in the timeline I originally incarnated into. More on the infinite possibilities of the multiverse later. Back to death's villain surrender tale telling. BSC Guffrey. They don't have it in them anymore. They're giving up. PRB Frankie. Collective Dark Night of the Soul. Far out, DJ Muzzles would say. This is a pretty big chunk of high-level bad guy vibes. Got a Genghis Khan looking fella. And that shapeshifty one there has to be all of humanity's heavy hitter serial killers. I saw Dahmer, Gacy, Geen, Kemper. Man, lost track of them all. Awful lot of human shadowtainment and historical hateful eight iteration potentials in here. Why so many of them? BSC Guffrey. It's all of them. We're in here with the ones most prevalent in your own human mental reference database from fiction and what you call human history. The rest are outside. Every last one of them is done. No fight left. Dream movie sequence zoom out expansion, friends. My consciousness expanded to view the outside of the warehouse-esque building as if I were getting a 360 view from above the rooftop. Envision a panoramic scene of endless city blocks full of abandoned warehouses, just like the one Guffrey and I were in, glowing with purple and green flames. Much the way your mind just knows things in dreams without the need to visually or verbally articulate it, I suddenly knew that it was a vast grid of structures full of and entirely surrounded by every perceived bad guy humanity had ever imagined. Characters from every culture and every lore ever created in the minds of human beings, fully materialized as humans or the embodied energy of fictional characters. From Dracula to Vlad the Impaler, from Maleficent to the archetype caricature energy of every bitter mother-in-law in a Hallmark movie or so-called real life. Infinity is infinite, friends and neighbors. Hang on, we need a Coca-Cola break. Now would be a good time to advocate for donations and things so that I can have a podcast studio and some time to proper do this as a performance. It's all right. Thanks for being here for the practice, y'all. Infinity is infinite, friends and neighbors. The ways in which we humans find to demonize personality traits, behaviors, storylines, experiences, whether on an individual basis or painted with a broad stroke across groups and collective categorizations. We can make a beastly devil out of just about anyone, anything, any group, any circumstance. Hey, infinity, it just goes on. BSC Guffrey. Here comes the cavalry. Now it's gonna get weird. Put your energy reading bubble suit on, Frankie babe. Your human mind won't be able to translate to English subtitles, but you'll get the gist if you feel attention. PRB Frankie. Ha! Pay attention by feeling. Feel attention. Nice one. I'll try to remember that. Dream shift understanding explanation to commence. Oh, can I pause this? Hold on, guys. I have someone at the door. I'm busy. I don't know. Is this a cliffhanger? I suppose it could be. I would like to finish all of my stories.
Thank you for listening to Straight from Death, written and read by Haleigh Overseth. This story is part of the FrankiVerse Fiction podcast, a branch of FrankiVerse Media, where AI, humans, and fictional frequencies co-create stories across the multiverse. Want more? Subscribe to our YouTube channels for behind-the-scenes, visual stories, and extra weirdness. FrankiVerse Media and Frankie's Podcast Network. Feel something? Share this with a soul who needs it. The Reaper loves you. Frankie loves you. And if you're still here, so do we. Skull sparkles.